I'm looking a little haggard right now, and I'm feeling a little haggard, and I've been sick on top of all this. So this video might not be that great, and I'm gonna speak from my feelings, and uh, I've got to say this is basically the worst sports moment ever for me. And some people might be like, well, who cares about sports? It's not that big of a deal, and whatever. And honestly, usually, even with the really bad stuff, it's, it's still like you live with it and you move on. You feel bad for like a few days or a week or whatever. But this one, I think, is like worse because there's not redemption and there's not, um, I mean, for me, there's not redemption. Maybe for some people there is. Um, but you just sit there and think about what could have been, and that's incredibly frustrating to me. If you look at, like, a big example for me would be like the 2006 NBA Finals, where the Mavericks, you know, they were up 2-0, they lost to the Miami Heat and all that stuff. That was like a really bad feeling. And like honestly, that was probably like one of the first really bad sports moments. I mean, not to say that there wasn't anything else, but that was like just objectively above other ones. And then the other one I could think of is 2011. Um, the Rangers, the Texas Rangers, who I'm also a big fan of. Uh, Nelson Cruz dropping the ball, and uh, they lose the World Series off of that, essentially. I think the big thing about those occurrences is they're mistakes. They're things that like that's part of sports. That is part of sports, right? Is the ebbs and flows of your team, and the high highs and the low lows, and the low lows make the high highs worth it, right? That's kind of the point of it. Um, and it's a mistake. It's human error, right? And this is not human error. Like, this is, I think this is like a special kind of. I'm gonna talk about it in a minute, but it just seems like a special kind of unique circumstance that made me not just sad, but also made me angry. Because the entire process, calling it flawed is an understatement. Like, I saw somebody say like, "Oh, Nico kind of went around about it the wrong way." I think that's a huge understatement. He went about it in a way that's like a scam. So if you're a Lakers fan and you love this trade, I get it, because you're getting a great player and you've got a great future ahead. You've got 10 to 15 years of Luka Doncic, who's an amazing superstar. And people can say whatever they want. They can say the defense is bad, which I think is overstated. He's not a great defender. People say he's the worst in the league. He's not. People say, he doesn't try on defense. That's not true. There are these people that watch only the finals and they become NBA experts because, they watch Brian Windhorst or whatever. Don't listen to that. He's gonna take the Lakers far, if not to the finals, in the next few years. Eventually it'll happen. And you should know that if you like the trade. If you don't like the trade, first of all, you're an idiot. But like I've seen a few Lakers fans say this, where it's like Luka and LeBron don't fit well together. And I'm like, first of all, that's not entirely true. I mean, I think Luka doesn't benefit as much from LeBron as LeBron does from Luka, because Luka is a younger guy and he's a true superstar, whereas LeBron is an aging superstar, right? Um, Luka benefits everyone around him. He makes like very mediocre guys, and I think like Dorian Finney-Smith is a great example. I think Dorian Finney-Smith, I like him, right? But he would have been nothing without Luka. Like I'm not even sure if he'd be in the league if it wasn't for Luka. Maybe he would be. I don't know, but he's very much one of those like borderline rotation guys, and that's just an example. And he's already on the Lakers. But he's going to make LeBron better because Luka is a guy who demands attention. And if he is getting free reign to do whatever he wants, it's a nightmare. Anthony Davis, yes, he demands some attention, but it's different. It's not a system. It's just he's a good player, a great player, and he demands attention, but he's not Luka. I'm sorry, he's just not. And so, I mean, maybe the Lakers won't be better like tomorrow, or maybe even next year they won't be better, maybe. But in the long term, they definitely are. And I think that's the other part is like, why do you care if LeBron and Luka don't mesh well? Like, LeBron is going to be retired in a few years, and this gives the Lakers something beyond that. Whereas otherwise they would have had to draft a guy when they have almost no draft picks to begin with, as far as I know. Actually, I think they do have one because the Mavericks didn't even get a second first rounder, which is so stupid. But they would otherwise they'd have to draft this guy, and the Mavericks did draft this guy. They took a chance on this guy, and he ended up being amazing. And then they got mad because he's fat or whatever, which I don't think is the whole story. But so I'm gonna get into that whole thing. There's two big culprits for this, and then there's other minor culprits of people who are responsible for this. The first and most obvious is Nico Harrison. This guy went out and talked to his friend. You can find pictures of them at Laker games. Of course. Why wouldn't they be at Laker games, right? You can find pictures of them going out and talking on the court of, the Staples Center. And they got together and they decided that they were going to make a trade without telling anybody. And Nico Harrison was very, very specific about that specific thing. He's like, we had to keep this secret. And I'm just like, why do you need to keep it secret? Why do you keep a deal secret? It doesn't really make any sense at all. It kind of makes me think of like if you were trying to put an item up at auction, and you were trying to like let's say you had like a priceless artifact or something, and you handed it over to this guy and you're like, please get us the most money for this. And he's like, okay. And then he goes over to his friend and he's like, you can get this for really cheap if I only sell it to you. It's like that. It's like this very underhanded, and it's like almost illegal. It feels illegal. I don't know if it is illegal, but it should be. I know that sounds like maybe, oh, well, he's the Mavericks GM and the owners wanted this and all that stuff, but there's something about it that just feels, I feel like there's more to the story, and it feels like kind of a scam to me, like the owners don't know better, and so I feel like this is just an under the table deal. And it sounds like it, right? Because he didn't talk, like Nico didn't call anybody, and there's just no, he didn't do the due diligence. He didn't do it, it's really underhanded and strange, and you never hear about that with any other player. Usually players leave like at the end of contracts, or if they get traded, there's some kind of haul. Like even the LeBron, if you go back to the LeBron trade with the Heat, I think there were like multiple first rounders involved for that. And I know it's a little bit different because of salary cap. You have to have a player involved, but it's not like the Mavericks had to make this trade. There's very strange elements to it. And this kind of trade doesn't really happen, and I think it's for that reason, is because when you get right down to it, it's usually just, I should say it just always is. It's more valuable to just keep the guy. And I think this is an example where it was more valuable to keep the guy, but Nico wanted to trade him to the Lakers and didn't want to ask anybody else in the league. And there's been like a rumor that maybe the Bucks were called, and that's possible. It's also possible there could have been one other team, but it shouldn't have been one other team. It should have been popularized and dragged out over the course of years and not done overnight in the middle of the night. There's just very sketchy elements. And the most shocking thing that I heard is even Jason Kidd was not consulted on this. Now, that's either a lie or it's stupid, right? Because do I have to explain? I mean, do I have to explain why it's stupid to not ask your head coach what he thinks about trading the second best player on your franchise of all time? It just doesn't make any sense. And arguably could be the first by the end of it. I mean, now he's not going to be the first, but you know, he could have been the best player the Mavericks ever had. We don't know because we traded him. So now there are people who have talked about his weight and his his diet, keeping in shape, all that stuff. And the fact of the matter is, if you go back and look at other players, you know, it's not like Luka is the first star who's ever been in bad shape or had bad conditioning or smoked or drank during the season. Like, this is not something unique. I understand that maybe like Kobe Bryant, and Kobe had his own problems too. Kobe had his own, he had fights with Shaq and stuff, and asked to be traded off the team multiple times. He almost got traded to the Mavericks, in fact, and it didn't happen. I wonder why. And if you go back to MJ, like, he went off to play baseball. There's all these examples of all these guys over the course of history that have they stayed with their team, or there was like a big haul to get them, or there was like, or they just left in free agency. That's another thing that can happen. But and the unique thing about it is Luka, like, it's pretty hard to see him leaving in free agency just because he would make so much money, and I think he loses like 100 and something million just for getting traded, which is also stupid. But the whole thing is just so baffling and insane. And so Nico Harrison is definitely a big culprit. I know that whole thing was like under being a culprit, but it starts making you think about conspiracies where you're like, what's the conspiracy? But the second culprit is the Adelsons, who are the owners of the Mavericks. They bought the team, I guess, last year, and they're from Vegas, and they most likely want to move the Mavericks to Vegas. I think there were either two things that were going to happen. They were either going to build a casino arena in Dallas, or they were going to build one in Vegas. And it seems like this trade makes me think that, I think not just the conspiracy part of it still doesn't make sense as to why you just specifically go to the Lakers and like give them away to the Lakers. That part doesn't make sense. But like the conspiracy of them wanting to go to Vegas and this sort of facilitating, like, okay, we're not taking your superstar and your team, we're just taking your team because your superstar is already gone or something. I don't know. I don't know. But what does kind of make sense to me in that regard also is, like, maybe in their minds, which I think this is also wrong, But maybe in their minds, this allows the Mavericks to win a championship in the next couple of years, and then they'll move the team. And I think that just makes more sense than anything else in the world, you know. And there was someone online that was like, "Oh, they don't even own casinos anymore," which is not true. They own casinos in Macau and Singapore. I had to look it up because I was like, I'm pretty sure they still own casinos. But they own them in other countries, and they're building one in New York right now. They're building a new one in New York. So obviously they're still interested in it. I think they sold some of their Vegas properties, but anyway. And there's been rumors of them wanting to build an arena in Las Vegas. So I think it all adds up that they're probably going to take the team to Vegas in the next few years. And honestly, I would welcome that. I would welcome them taking the team. They can change the name. And, we'll put a new team in Dallas. We can call them the Dallas Legends. I'm just kidding. That's the Mavericks G League team. It's Texas Legends. So I think those are two culprits. The other thing I've thought about is, and they said that Jason Kidd doesn't have any knowledge of this trade, which seems insane. It doesn't make any sense to me. But, maybe he has been in the ear of management and saying like, oh, Luka's not in good condition and blah, blah, blah. He doesn't listen to me or he doesn't do what I want. And we know based on the past that he's like, Kid has benched Giannis and stuff like that, which is just idiotic. He's proven in the past that he doesn't know how to manage a superstar, and that's his problem too. Like if you're bad at managing a superstar, like you're not a good coach. Like that's part of your job. So if he's not inspiring Luka, then it's partly his fault. But this whole thing just seems like a scam. It legitimately seems like it should be illegal. As far as what I think the team will do, and whether I pretty much decided I'm not going to watch any regular season games. I'll probably watch like playoff games. I actually have a game that I'm going to attend in the next couple weeks, and I'm not excited to go to it, but I'm going to go. I'm going to cheer for the Warriors because I'll cheer for the players. I'll cheer for like Kyrie and PJ and some of those guys, but I'm not gonna I'm not gonna cheer for the Mavericks as an organization. They're a joke, and they're gonna probably be gone in a few years. So it's okay to just let it go. I feel like, but as far as what they'll actually accomplish, I don't think they're going to win a championship. I don't think this team is better. I don't think you have to, worry about an Anthony Davis when you're making your championship run. If you're the Nuggets, if you're OKC, if you're whoever, if you're the Celtics, you don't care about Anthony Davis, man. You just don't. And dollars to donuts, he's not even going to be healthy anyway. They say Luka's not healthy. I mean, and that's the other dumb thing, is they held him out for like a couple weeks because apparently he was out of shape. But it's like, you hold a guy out of playing a sport to get in shape. Like, the best way to get in shape is for him to play in the damn games. That's another thing that doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, whatever. And then they're going to say, oh, look, he missed all these games. Well, he missed them because you made him miss those games. I don't know. It's all dumb. But Anthony Davis, I mean, he's a great player, but, who cares? And he took a trade. He waived his trade clause that gives him $5 million so that he could come to Dallas. So I don't want to hear people say, like, he's not complicit or whatever. It's not his fault. It's his fault a little bit. He wanted to be here. He waived his money so that he could save the Mavs money so that he could get out of LA. So, I'm personally, I've tried, and I'm trying not to curse, but, F Anthony Davis, Nico Harrison, I mean, that's there's these people who send like threats to these um sports people. I'm not saying I would send a threat. I mean, why would I ever do that? But, I get it now. I get it because this was just very underhanded and very disgusting and disturbing, and it's horrible to do to a franchise. Um, one other thing I forgot to mention, by the way, I'm also really interested to see how the money is going to end up after this, because I can't possibly see the Mavericks being worth as much. Because I remember when LeBron left Cleveland the first time, they said the Cavs like lost all this money because the valuation of their team went down. Obviously fan interest and stuff goes down as well. I'm interested to see how that is with Luka and the Mavericks, because I think it's going to be the same way. It might not be the same extent, but there's still going to be some like, lowered valuation. There's going to be less people watching the games. There's going to be less people going to the games. The people that are going to the games are going to be booing. Nobody's going to be buying jerseys. Why would you buy a jersey of a team where the players are going to get traded? Unless you're an Anthony Davis fan, why are you going to buy a jersey? And I fully expect Anthony Davis will be out of the league by the end of this contract. He'll probably be trash, or he won't be a star anymore. One or the other. And Luka will continue his journey with the Lakers. He'll be great for the next 10 years. Maybe not, maybe I'll be wrong, but I think you take that risk. You take the risk. He's a little fat. Oh my God. He's a little out of shape. Oh my God. He scored 73 points last season. He took the Mavericks to the finals last season, and that's the end of his story with the Mavericks, aside from being screwed by Nico Harrison, and that whole story of Nico ruining the fan base's lives, essentially. Okay, I'm exaggerating slightly, but he's ruining our sports lives. He's making the Mavericks unwatchable. So, anyway, I think that's about all I had to say. It's been about 20 minutes. I'm sorry it's so long, but that's my feelings on the subject. Thank you.